Welcome back. I apologize for this video taking so long to get posted. I originally had these recorded at the end of week 3 during the live class. Unfortunately, the sound quality wasn't what I wanted. It was very echoey in my opinion. So I'm going to redo the video and I'll be demonstrating each letter that we covered in week 3 2 times. If you would like to see a third demonstration, you will need to drag the button back and rewatch a portion of the video. I'll be starting with capital letter R and going to the end of the alphabet and including special characters. For the capital R, we're going to start with the back of the B, and I use one of these vertical lines as my guide to make sure my letter is straight. So I have the back of the B, I have a squiggle at the bottom. Then I'm going to come back here behind the start of my letter, and I'm going to arc over just like what we did for the top of capital B. And then I'm going to drop down and lift. This part is purely pressure as I'm lifting off the page. I'm going to come back and add my flourish here at the end. So one more time, we have the back of the B, a squiggle, curve over the top and in, and lift off, and add the teardrop. What most beginners struggle with is the proportion of R and getting the right proportion of the top of the R as well as the angle of the kickstand, as I like to call it. The proportions, again, come with practice, very similar to all the other letters that I've mentioned that beginners struggle with. Next, I'll be demonstrating the lowercase r. For lowercase r, I'm going to start with a hook like this, almost looks like a oddly tilted apostrophe, and drop down, arc up, drop down. So hook, drop, arc, drop. Just like that. Go ahead and try both R's a few times. Feel free to pause this video to practice. Next is the capital letter S. Using one of these rectangles in the grid, you're going to start in the upper left corner, and you're going to drop down a little bit so you have a nice thin little line. My pen is not cooperating with me. Please forgive my pen. And you're going to serpentine down just like this. S is really the only letter that has this stroke, so it's not one you've seen before. So go ahead and pause the video and practice this unit a few times. Once you've practiced that, come back up to the top and connect and drop in. Notice I don't touch this line. And after you have this part done, come down and you're going to start about right here and drop and connect. This connection is a pressure connection, meaning I'm lifting off my page as I'm connecting back in. That is why that is so thin and delicate. That is something that comes from practice, and I wish there were a magic little secret I could give you to make that super easy, but it really is just practice. So one more time, we're going to start in the upper left corner. We're going to serpentine down, up at the top, hook at the bottom, and lift off to connect. Lowercase s is very similar to uppercase s, just about half the size. And because it's half the size, we're going to start about halfway on one of these vertical lines. You're going to serpentine, top, and bottom. Again, serpentine, drop, and bottom. So it's the same as the capital S, just smaller. For T, we're again going to start with the back of the B, squiggle at the bottom, And then for the T, because I use one of these vertical lines to keep the back of my letters straight, I will actually start in the center of this rectangle right here. And I'm going to curve up just like that. And in some cases, I could leave my T just like that, but I am going to add one of the little teardrops right there. Drop, so back of the B, squiggle, lift, just like that. I would say that in this example, this is a little bit short for what I would want in my T, but if this was the first T in my project, I would just have to make all of my T's look like that. If I wanted to expand it a little bit, I would add a little bit more width and length to the ends. It does take away some of the gracefulness of that top, but it is certainly an option. For lowercase t, I'm going to, again, start with something akin to the back of the B. I'm really just going to drop and hook just like that. So I have basically a curve up here, drop and hook. I'm then going to do a squiggle across. So we have the back of the B, but instead of hooking back like what you would for the B, you're going to hook forward. And T. For U, most adults at this point are very used to a rounded U that doesn't have a little tail at the bottom. This U is pointier and does have a tail, so please be aware of those differences. Starting again in one of the rectangles, I'm going to start in the upper corner, but I'm going to come in just a little bit, about right here, maybe about a quarter of the way in. I'm going to drop nice and thin and lift up. So I should have this very nice sharp curve. I'm then going to come back up to the top, this upper right corner, and I'm going to drop down and lift up. Then I'm going to come back and do my flourish. So you should have a U that looks something like that. You can make this thinner if you want. So we're going to do that one more time. For lowercase u, it's a very similar process, but you don't have this front flourish, and it's about half the size. So you're going to start about halfway up, hook up, down, and lift, just like this. So you should have almost a lowercase I, but with a longer tail. Now you're going to start back up the top, and you're going to want to try to line up with this, so you have an even letter. Drop and lift. Again, we have kind of an elongated lowercase I, drop and lift. For V, the uppercase V is one of my favorite letters. You're going to start again in one of the upper left-hand corners. You're going to hook up. So again, we have that weird little apostrophe. Hook up, drop down, just like this. Hook up, drop down. So the second stroke should be almost half a heart. So again, that is a hook, a drop, and you'll notice I'm subtly curving this, and I'm coming down to about halfway between these two lines. I'm going to come back up about halfway into this line, or onto this line, hook up, and curve down, so I have half a heart. I would say what most beginners struggle with is the width of the letter. I will fill up pretty much an entire rectangle, and in both cases here, I have actually gone into the next rectangle over by about a nib's width. So for lowercase v, you're going to, again, start about halfway up on one of the vertical lines in the rectangle. You're going to hook up and drop down. And then this is where the letter differentiates from the capital. Instead of having this half a heart, we're going to bring your elbow in closer to your trunk. And you're going to do a little hyphen. Now I'm going to release my elbow and drop down. So again, that is a hook up, bring my elbow in, hyphen, release my elbow, drop down. I am not changing how I am holding the pen. I am changing my entire arm's position. I am not rotating the pen in my hand. That's something I see a lot of beginners trying to do to get these different thins and thicks throughout their letters. Please don't do that. It will throw the angle of your pen off, and either it will make it more difficult to write, it will release too much ink, or you'll start getting either super skinny letters or super blobby letters, and it will not have the look that you want. For W, I teach an alternate form of the W from the handouts I gave you in class. The alternate W is in the shaded area at the bottom of the page with the capitals. So starting in the upper left corner, we're going to hook up and drop down. So you should have an angle with a slight itty bitty hook at the bottom, or at the top, excuse me. Then you're going to do a nice thin stroke up, and you're going to come back up. And I'm not starting on this line, I'm starting a little bit before that. I'm going to hook up, drop down, just like that. And then in this second rectangle, so this is a 2 rectangle letter, I'm going to start about a third of the way from this line, just like that. So one more time, I'm going to hook and drop, thin up, start at the top, hook, drop, come back up to the top, half a heart. For the lowercase w, we are going to refer back to the V for the lowercase v. You're going to do the same stroke you did on the front of this lowercase v as the beginning of the W. Just like that. Thin up, and then you're basically going to do another lowercase v. Drop, pinch your elbow into your abdomen, hyphen, and thin down. So curve, up, drop, pinch your elbow towards yourself, release your elbow, thin down. Now X. I teach 2 forms of the letter X. I teach the first one, which is basically 2 C's situated with their backs together. And what people struggle with this one is getting the center connection. It is very common to see 2 beginners miss that connection, have a gap. So you're going to start in the upper left-hand corner. You're going to cut up, drop down. So we have a nice skinny little mark. And connect. Starting up, drop down, and connect with a little teardrop up there. One more time. Have a curve. So you should have basically a very shallow backward C at this point. Then come back up to the top. I am not starting directly in this corner. I'm coming in a little bit from it. So I can drop, connect, and lift, and do a teardrop. This is not my favorite form of X. I have classes that are very, very divided. Some people love this version of X. Other people hate this version of X and are grateful I teach the alternate form. Again, on your handout, it is in the bottom area of on your copy, it should be kind of a light shaded gray. You'll see the alternate form of W as well as the alternate form of X. And for the alternate form of X, we're going to start in the upper corner. We're going to cut up, drop down and lift. Starting up in this corner, nice and thin. I'm going to do my flourishes again. Hook up, drop down nice and thick, and lift. Up, back up to the corner, nice and thin down. Thick and thick. Little teardrops. For the lowercase x, it is similar to the alternate form. It's just, again, half the size. So about halfway up, you're going to do a hook and a drop and a lift. So think lowercase I, but at an angle and stretched out just a little bit. And then we're going to do a nice thin down with a little flourishes at either end. One more time, we're going to cut up, drop down and lift, nice and thin, little teardrop for my flourishes. For Y. On the handout you received in class, there is not an alternate form of Y, but it's what I teach. I do not teach the Y on the handout you were given. The Y I teach as the capital Y is very similar to the lowercase y on your handouts. So for the alternate form of Y that I teach, and it is the only form of Y that I teach, you're going to start in the upper left-hand corner. You're going to hook up, drop down, and lift. You'll have something very similar to the U if you wanted to maintain the same flourish structure as you did in your U. You absolutely can. I personally don't. Then you're going to start up here at the top and curve down. This curve right here, this taper, is pressure. It is me lifting off of my page. Then I'm going to come over here into this box. I'm going to come down, over, and lift. So one more time, we're going to hook up, drop down, and lift. Connect and taper by pressure. Come over here. That is the capital Y. So the lowercase y is, again, very, very similar, but about half the size. So we're going to have the same structure, just about halfway high or halfway up on this line. Drop down and connect in. One more time. Basically a lowercase I with an elongated tail, and do the back with that bottom taper just like this, and do that front hook. For the uppercase Z, you are going to come up here at the top again to this upper left hand corner, do a long squiggle across. Now you're going to cut down thin and a diagonal, kind of like what you did here with the X. I do a slight bend in this stroke on the Z. So you'll see my slight bend there. Now I'm actually going to come a little bit into this box right here on this grid. Up and over. And then I'm going to do my squiggle for the center crossbar. I'm going to isolate this stroke because it's not one that we see a whole lot in this alphabet. So to do that stroke, find a small square, start in this corner. Now you're not starting on the corner, you're using that as a reference point. You're actually going to kind of start at a diagonal to that corner. You're going to do a nice thin up, and then, so you should have a shape similar to this. So one more time for the whole letter. We're going to do the top bar. You can add a teardrop here if you want. Nice subtle little curve. Diagonal. And the crossbar. Lowercase z does not have the crossbar, but it does have pretty much everything else. So again, about half the size, so you're going to start about halfway up. Squiggle over. Diagonal down. I don't curve this diagonal, it's too short. And the bottom. So we have the top, diagonal, and the bottom. Now, I mentioned special characters at the beginning of this video, and the reason I did that is because in calligraphy, it's not always easy to do a double P or a double F. So here's some examples of what those look like, and now I will demonstrate on how to do both the double F and the double P. So if you're writing the word coffee, happy, happen, you are going to run into this where you are a little short of space, or to write two separate Fs would look very, very clunky, and you don't want something in your project looking clunky. So to do a double F, there's two forms, starting in one of these upper corners. I'm actually going to start a little ways down from it if I'm being honest about it. I'm going to do an elongated back of the B. So I've started a hair below, and when I mean a hair, I mean talking about like a hair's width down from this corner. And I am about halfway on this line, this box, when I taper back. Now I'm going to carry forward, and I'm going to carry back. So this is quite square for my angle. So if you end up with something that's looking really, really square, that is how this letter is formed, or this character. Now I'm going to come up a little bit. I'm going to drop down, and then I'm going to connect right there and connect there at the top. I'm going to do a long squiggle for my crossbar. That is one form of the double F. I'll demonstrate that one more time. We have an elongated back of the B, squiggle over, flourish, drop with a taper, squiggle, elongated squiggle. The other form of the double F has never been a favorite with my students, but I'll demonstrate it anyway. You're going to do the same structure as this F. And then again, you're going to start up here a little ways, but instead of going backwards, you're going to do a very sharp hook forwards like this. We're going to add the top of that F and an elongated squiggle. So one more time, elongated back of the B, back, for the P, again, there are 3 versions of the double P. I will demonstrate them all. So the first version is kind of mixed reviews from my different students. And you're going to start that by doing a sharp cut up and drop down. Connect in. You should have something that looks like a weird J at this point. Then you're going to come to the front. Nice sharp up, curve down, and finish. So that is 3 strokes right there in the front. I'm going to come over just a smidge, drop down. And starting about right here, you are not touching this letter. You're coming in right here, and you're going to follow that angle. Just like that. I did not do that right. Please ignore this. Let's try that again. Up, down, with a taper at the bottom, curve at the front. So we have a nice little J. Cut up, curve down, and bottom. Cut up, drop down, and now we're going to do a long squiggle. This is basically the same stroke as the bottom of the Z. Same shape. Now we're going to have a nice sharp point up, curve down, and connect it all in. This next version of the double P has never once been a favorite with my students. And that is, you're going to cut up, drop down, and connect back in, just like what you did the first time. Cut up, drop down, connect. Now you're going to drop down and curve forward. Do a sharp little skinny line right there. Cut up, curve down, and connect. The last form, and then I'll demonstrate them all again at the end, is you're going to cut up, drop down, bottom of the capital Z, up, curve down, close the bottom, cut up, come down, and close the bottom. Out of the 3, this is my personal favorite. So one more time, starting with this first one. I'm going to cut up, drop down, taper back, do the hooks. We have a weird J, front, close the bottom, hook up, drop down, bottom of the Z, up, down, close the bottom, hook up, drop down, weird J, hook up, curve down, close the bottom. So again, weird looking P. Drop down, curve forward so you have a blunt end, sharp little line, hook up, curve down, and close the bottom. Third form, hook up, drop down, hook so you have a weird J, sharp up, curve down, close the bottom. Yo, I'm so sorry, I did that wrong. Please ignore that. But that is the shape you're going for if you're going for one of the first 2. For the third version, I should not be recording at 11 o'clock at night. We're going to hook up, drop down, bottom of the capital Z, sharp up, curve down, close the bottom, drop, go ahead and do your little hook at the top if you want, sharp up, curve down, bottom. Those are the special characters. I will also demonstrate the numbers, but I will only demonstrate the numbers one time each. And that is because the numbers are much, much simpler than the letters. So we have, starting with 1, you're going to start in this upper right corner. You're going to hook up, drop down, squiggle. Going to curve for 2, so we have that half a heart, very similar to the capital V, but even more pronounced. This is a true half a heart. Now you're going to do a squiggle at the bottom, do hook up at the top. For the 3, you're going to do a squiggle at the top, a short diagonal, nice and thin, curve. So we have almost a 3, and you're going to come back and connect. I'm going to go ahead and thicken up that teardrop just a little bit. For the 4, I recommend starting up in this corner and dropping nice and thin, cutting over. This is very similar to the top of the Z, and then you're going to drop and do a little squiggle similar to what you did here at the bottom of the 1. For the 5, starting up in the upper left hand corner, drop and curve, very similar to this curve on the 3. And we're going to connect that back in. I'm going to thicken that teardrop up just a smidge, and I'm going to do a squiggle. I would just like you all to witness the best 5 I've ever made in my life. Right up here for the 6, we're going to start up here at the top. We're going to drop nice and thin, fall to thick, and lift. Starting back up here, and on your handout it shows about halfway up. I think it's a bit much, so I dropped down just below halfway. And nice round, connect to thin, and have a nice heavy teardrop there at the top. For the 7, I'm going to start on the upper left corner of a rectangle. I want to make sure I'm still on my screen. Yes, I am. And we're going to do a nice squiggle. And then you're going to drop diagonal, starting out thin. And you're going to angle it so it thickens up just a smidge. And I'm going to go ahead and thicken that up with my nib. For the 8, again, this is the only other time you're going to see this serpentine, because it's basically a figure 8. So you're going to serpentine just like what you did with the S. I make my 8s a little bit curvier up here at the top. So starting in upper left corner, you're going to cut down, serpentine over, go ahead up at the top, right there. And then you notice I have picked my pin back up, even though I'm going to continue this connection. And then I'm going to finish out that connection right there. And then for the 9, on your handout, the 1 is actually my 2. I'm going to start up in this, I'm going to kind of start in the upper left corner, but I'm actually going to come in a little bit from that. I'm going to hook up and come down. So you should have kind of a shallow half a heart. And then connect in. Ooh, that is the worst 9 I've ever made in my life. Let's try that one more time. So we have half a heart. Circle that in. I'm going to thicken that bottom up a little bit. And this is the worst 9s I've ever done in my life. Y'all, I am so sorry. Again, I should not be making videos at 11 at night. But you do see the shape I am going for overall. Oh, is the third time going to be the charm? Third time the charm? Well, third time is at least better. It is not perfect, and I am so sorry for that. 9s have never been my strong suit. For the 0, I do want to make a very important distinction on this 0 on your handouts. You'll notice the letter O has a gap up at the top. The 0 is completely closed in. So to do that, we're basically going to make an O, but we're going to close that top. So instead of having a gap right here, you're going to start with that connection and 0. Okay, other special letters would be different punctuation marks. So for an apostrophe, a comma, quotation marks, you're going to take your pen, thick to thin, look, quotation marks. For a comma, you're just going to do it the same thing, just lower. For a semicolon, so we have basically a comma right there. A colon is going to be 2 dots. Question mark, hook, drop, period. Go ahead and add a little teardrop onto that. Exclamation mark, just a line and a dot. Percentage sign, we have a little circle, thin over, thin down, and a little circle. Hyphens, I just do squiggles. You could also do, that's a little wonky. You could just do a straight line like that. I just prefer to do the squiggles so they match the crossbars on my letters. On your handout, you'll also notice that the alphabet includes an S set. This is not a character we use in the English language. It is used primarily in German, but there's other languages that also use S sets. If you are writing in one of those languages that uses an S set, here's how you do one. Starting in the upper left-hand corner, you're going to do the back of the B. You're going to come up, and unlike the R or the B, instead of starting back here, you're actually going to connect and connect, and I do a nice little hook. So you'll notice there is a gap here, and this does not touch. To do an ampersand or an and sign, you're going to curve and lift, come up here at the top and hook, so you have kind of a weird looking E, and then I come in here, do a nice little curve, and starting about right here at the top, I'm going to do a long squiggle. I believe that concludes all of the special characters and letters for Calligraphy 1. I hope you had a wonderful time, and I hope to see you all in the future. Have a great night.